You can pull off some sick combos in Marvel Spider-Man 2, but you will need the upgrades for it. That's why today we're gonna take a look at some of the best unlocks early that you definitely should go ahead and take. We're not just gonna talk about specific Spidey powers, but also gadgets and some of the shared skills that will just bring you to the next level. Starting things off, one of the most brutal early on combos is the bounce up plus the leap of bounce. In fact, I recommend this entire line right here in the shared skill tree, as this has infinite combo potential. But the first starting two will help you a ton to bounce off and ping pong targets between you and the ground almost infinitely. So what you can do is bring them up in the air and then hold down triangle. This is going to grab them and immediately smash them into the ground, which is going to bounce them off back to you. And what you can do is to follow up with a second hold of the X button instead, which is going to hit them again, bounce them again for the second time, and from that point on you can just reset the combo or go into different attacks. Like seriously, this is one of the coolest ways to take down enemies, but eventually you can upgrade this even more. And once you get the web swing combo, this is when it truly becomes interesting, because now if you do a swing kick, which you do normally by holding down square whenever you attack enemies, you can immediately follow up with a triangle tap, and this is now going to let you launch yourself with the enemy even more high up. I really enjoyed this one because it's one of the few combos and skills in the entire game that can also juggle even brute enemies up into the air, so you're gonna be able to take them down a lot more easier with that triangle tap at the end of the impact kick. But you can also combine this with the web shooters, so since you're going to smash targets into surfaces with both the triangle and the X hold, what you can do is to just web them up with the shooters first and then just smash them into something and immediately take them out of the combat. You're gonna definitely want to do that since there are tons of enemies, so you will want to take them down efficiently. But like I said in yesterday's video, the parry is an absolutely amazing new mechanic and especially useful against some of these new melee enemies that will constantly track you and you cannot dodge their attacks. This is where that comes into play. However, immediately invest into the parry disarm, which is going to automatically make those targets drop their weapons. It's especially useful against the ones with the swords, since this is going to no longer have them cast those abilities against you, and by the time they even retake their weapons, it's going to be too late. You can simply take them down the normal way. This won't work on many of the brutes and mini bosses, however, but you can still use, for example, something like the web blast, so follow up with the web shooters immediately after a parry to launch back enemies and immediately just web them up against the surface. In both of these situations, it works very well. Obviously, for many of these abilities and to cast a lot of your takedowns, you're going to need quite a lot of focus meter. So that's why I suggested in yesterday's video for the suit tag to immediately focus on, well, the focus first and get a couple of bars at the very least before moving on to the damage and the health. Maybe even Traversal. I would keep Traversal at the last one, but the focus is most important, obviously, because you need the takedowns, you obviously need the healing, and you don't want to like have one bar for both of them because you have to then wait for the other one to recharge. So in this case, at least 2 bars is my recommendation. Once you got a couple of those bars, I would immediately invest all my other points, at least 3/4 into the damage category, and that's specifically for these two abilities called Air Marshal and the Floor is Lava. This is going to increase your air attacks damage by at least 50%. One of the biggest problems early on is how long it takes to defeat even the most normal of enemies. That's because you're really missing out on that air damage, while these two abilities in here will significantly increase that. Also the ones along the way, but these two specifically are the strongest, and once you reach the Floor is Lava, you can stop for a while and then focus on something else. But moving on, in my starting hours, I did a big mistake. I did not use my gadgets as often as I should have, and that's because I thought they were weak, simply because I did not invest enough points into them. But let me tell you this, the upshot plus the web grabber is an absolutely devastating one-shot combo against entire groups of enemies, especially if you upgrade these. Like for example on the web grabber, I definitely recommend to upgrade this at least 3 levels so that it can now also pull in brutes. But this is going to just stuck enemies very close to a dead center. So what you can do is follow up with your own attacks or even combine this with the upshot. So upshot is also really awesome because it deals quite a lot of damage that tends to also chain between targets, so it can be a very good source of damage. Plus, it always staggers bosses. Every time you shoot a boss with this, it's going to be interrupted for the entire duration. But I also recommend immediately combining these with a combo resupply very early on in the shared skill tree, as this has a chance at the end of a 4-hit melee combo to give you a charge of one of these, or basically a resupply. So you will notice as this is going to pop off of your screen, and what this means is that you can use it before the cooldown actually goes up and just have a free cast of one of these gadgets. And as you do more and more combos with the infinite ones I just told you, you can basically have these almost all the time in combat. Since gadgets tend to be so strong, I definitely recommend going with these recharge abilities here, like the perfect dodge, KO, and finally the gadget resupply. So whenever you, for example, perfect dodge, or even more so when you perform finishers, you don't just get to recharge them faster, but you even guarantee get some of the gadgets back as you do it. Now, one final skill early on that could potentially be great, but I kinda ignored it for the longest time, is the web throw, and eventually the upgrade that lets you spin around the brute enemies. But whenever you web up, electrify, or venom stun an enemy, you can now use your zip lines with the triangle hold to spin them around like in the previous game, so that you can, for example, smash them into surfaces. So in case you don't go up in the air and do the same combo on the ground level, this can be a bit faster, since enemies around you tend to not attack you during the spin. So this could be a great way to combine with the web shooters to eventually take down enemies before they get a chance to do anything. Now, moving on, I'm not going to lie, for Peter, I really enjoy his spider arm attacks a lot more than his symbiote attacks. I mean, it's not that those are bad, but I mean, it just feels like the spider arm attacks are a bit more brutal for some reason. And especially the tornado and its upgrade with the express webbing is one of my favorites, because this, what it does is it doesn't just let you do that tornado, which just pushes and sucks everything in a vacuum and throws them in front of you. But at the end of that, with the webbing upgrade, you will now also just trap those targets right away. So if they hit a wall or a surface or something, this is going to immediately disable them, take them out of the combat completely, as they are now pretty much stuck. It's not that the symbiote powers are not strong enough, and in fact there's one very good upgrade here, which is the symbiote yank empowered. So this is going to remove the limit of the number of enemies you can grab and slam into the ground with your tendrils. So I highly suggest going for this right away, as you really want to disable as many enemies as possible. And also that line onto the left side, that's going to all deal with recharging your ultimate and going into the rage mode. So I would suggest going into that one as soon as possible if you can afford the points early on. Now, eventually Miles also gets his chain lightning related abilities, and in my opinion these are way better than the Venom ones, just because they have much better group control and a lot more AoE damage. So later on I would immediately change to them in the ability section. This is going to let you control which abilities you slot with the L1, and this is, by the way, the same for Peter. So if you want to switch between his Venom powers or his spider arms, this is the place you can do that in. But in this case, that chain lightning and also the reverse flux is going to help a ton to better group up targets nearby and also unleash a ton more damage against them. One more set of upgrades that are not really mandatory but are nice to have are the movement related ones. So eventually you're going to probably want to make your way to this spider jump right here with the L1 plus X. So this is going to let you do a spider jump like in Miles Morales with both Pete and Miles, in fact. But it's going to be very helpful if you want to jump longer distances while at the top of a web swing. Plus, eventually you can get the aerial escapades and essentially regenerate these a lot quicker whenever you perform air tricks or point launches. Using air tunnels or even diving is going to give you a ton of recharge on that one. And this, ladies and gents, concludes today's video. Let me know down below what are your favorite combos to pull off in Marvel Spider-Man 2. I would really love to know your tricks and your best combat tips in the comments down below. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.